Welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight we have prepared one full hour of quiet, uneventful history to help you drift off peacefully. In the first story, you will spend a simple day in a medieval village. There is nothing exciting, just the slow rhythm of morning chores, fieldwork under a pale sun, and a quiet evening stew by the fire. In the second story, you will step into a courtyard in the ancient world where evening is settling over stone and clay. Oil lamps are being lit, bread and olives are set on a table, and the city slowly falls asleep. There is no need to pay attention, no need to remember anything. Just close your eyes, let your breathing slow, and let these boring, forgotten moments carry you into sleep. Let us begin.
Small medieval village. There is nothing urgent here. No great event is about to happen. No messenger is arriving. No bell is calling anyone to anything important. There is only a slow day, beginning in darkness and ending beside a low fire. So let your breathing settle. Let your thoughts become a little softer. Imagine a lane of packed earth, a few thatched cottages, a faint smell of wood smoke, and the cool air before dawn. In this village, life moves by habit. A hand reaches for embers. A bucket is lifted. A hen is fed. A field is crossed. Wool is spun. A stew is stirred. And then the village sleeps again. Chapter 1. Before the first light, long before sunrise, the cottage is still dark. The thatched roof holds the night's cold above the room, and the packed floor gives back a little of that chill. Blankets are still drawn close. The air smells of smoke, straw, wool, and old wood. It is the smell of a room used every day for sleeping, eating, mending, warming, and waiting out bad weather. Nothing in it is grand. Everything in it is useful. At the center of the room is the hearth. The fire is no longer burning, but under the ash a few embers remain. They are small and dull, but they are enough. In many cottages, that is how morning begins. Someone rises in the dark and kneels by the hearth. Dry straw or thin kindling is placed gently over the hidden heat. A careful breath is blown into the ash. The red beneath it brightens. Smoke appears first, then a small flame, then a steadier glow. The room is not warm yet, but it is beginning to wake. The first person up moves slowly. There is no reason to move quickly in the dark. Shoes are found by feel. A bench is touched in passing. A wooden cup is shifted aside. The door stays closed for now, and the room keeps its dim quiet. The fire gives a faint light to nearby hands and the lower edge of the wall. The rest remains shadow. In a medieval village, the day does not begin with a clock. It begins with habit and need. The season matters. The weather matters. The animals matter. The field matters. But first, before all of that, there must be warmth enough to start the day. A pot may be set near the fire. Water may be warmed. Yesterday's pottage may be stirred and brought back to heat. A heel of coarse bread may be softened near the coals. As the fire grows stronger, the room slowly changes. The edge of a stool becomes visible. A chest can be seen near the wall. A hanging cloth looks less like shadow and more like cloth again. A child turns in sleep. Another person coughs once in the smoky air. Quiet voices begin, low and practical. No one says much. There is not much to say at this hour. Morning is not for speeches. It is for beginning. When the door is finally opened, the outside air enters at once. It smells of damp earth, wet grass, and the faint warm scent of animals not far from the house. The sky is still dark blue or gray, depending on the weather and the season. The lane outside lies quiet. The neighboring cottages are only shapes. Their roofs hold beads of moisture from the night. Somewhere another hearth is being lit in the same way. Another person is blowing on yesterday's embers. Another room is slowly coming back into use. The first food of the day is simple. Dark bread, perhaps. A little warmed pottage. A swallow of watered ale or warm water. The point is not pleasure. The point is steadiness. The body must be ready for work, and that work begins early. The people in the cottage eat quietly, standing or sitting where there is space. The fire now gives enough heat to be useful. The room is no longer night, but it is not fully day either. It rests for a short moment in between. Soon the household is fully awake. A blanket is folded back. A tunic is shaken out. A wooden spoon is set down. Someone checks the latch. Someone lifts a bucket. The fire is steady now. The room is in order, and the cottage has done the first part of its work. Outside, dawn is coming. And with dawn come the animals, the yard, the milk pail, the straw, and the many small duties that belong to every ordinary village morning. Chapter 2. The morning chores. Once the hearth is lit and the household has taken its first small meal, attention turns outward. Morning chores cannot wait long. A hen does not care whether the fire was difficult to start. A cow does not delay her needs. A pig, if there is one, is rarely patient. The door opens, and the first real work of the day steps into the yard. The ground is cool underfoot. Dew clings to the grass and darkens the edges of worn shoes. The yard smells of straw, dung, damp wood, and animal heat. It is a strong smell, but it is a familiar one. In a peasant household, animals are not distant from daily life. They are close, practical, and necessary. Their milk, eggs, labor, and manure all matter. So each morning begins by seeing to them. Grain is scattered for the hens. They hurry in with quick feet, busy at once, pecking with complete attention. If there are geese, they move more slowly, but with equal seriousness. A pig receives scraps or mash in a trough. A goat may be let out or checked where it was tied. No movement is grand. It is all small, repeated, and known in advance. That is what makes these chores so steady. Every morning brings much the same order of tasks. Then there is the milking. A low stool is set down. A pail is placed in position. The cow's side is warm in the cool air of early morning. Her breath drifts softly. A hand rests against her flank. Then the work begins. Press and release. Press and release. Milk strikes the bucket in a gentle rhythm. It is one of the quietest sounds of labor, regular and calm. The bucket fills slowly, and no one expects it to happen quickly. Morning work in a village is shared. An older child may gather eggs. Another may carry water. One person lifts feed. Another straightens bedding straw in a stall. A woman who milks the cow may later knead dough, mend cloth, or stir the pot at noon. A man who checks the harness may later guide the plow. Village life is made of overlapping tasks rather than separate roles kept far apart. Much depends on who is present, who is able, and what must be done first. Cleaning is part of the morning too. Old straw is pulled aside. Fresh straw is spread where needed. A rope is untangled. A gate is checked. A latch is pushed back into place. These are quiet acts, but they matter. A village household depends on small care taken at the right time. If a hinge loosens, if a pen opens, if feed is wasted, the trouble comes later. So morning brings its own kind of order. Not beautiful order, perhaps, but useful order. As the light grows stronger, more of the village begins to stir. Another door opens along the lane. Smoke rises from another roof. A neighbor may call a few plain words. A dog crosses the path and stops to sniff the ground. A cartwheel creaks somewhere beyond the cottages. The village is awake now, though still not loud. It hums with work rather than noise. By now the animals are quieter. The pail has been carried in. The eggs have been gathered. The yard has been set in order again for a few hours. Morning chores have taken time, but that is expected. Much of village life is made of things that must be done before the larger work can even begin. Only after the creatures are fed, the milk is taken, and the household is settled does the day move on. Beyond the cottages, the fields are waiting. The soil is cool. The plow is ready. And the long, slow work of the morning continues there. Chapter 3. The quiet work of the field. Beyond the cottages and small garden plots, the fields open in long, plain stretches. They are not dramatic places. They are simply the ground on which much of life depends. Furrow after furrow, strip after strip, they wait for the same labor they received yesterday and will receive again tomorrow. The sky above them is wide. The earth below is dark, damp, and patient. Field work begins slowly, because much of it must. The plow is brought out. The harness is checked. If the household has an ox, the animal is led forward with steady care. Leather creaks. Wood presses against wood. Hooves sink a little into the soft ground. There is no sudden start. The body leans into the work, and the work answers in its own slow time. When the plow cuts the soil, the smell rises at once. Damp earth has a cool mineral smell, faintly sweet after rain and heavy with roots. The furrow opens in a dark line behind the blade. The worker guiding the plow must keep a steady grip. Hands tighten and loosen. Feet find their place. The shoulders settle into the pull of the task. It is not quick work. It is row after row, turn after turn, one long, patient movement across the ground. Some follow behind to break clods or clear stones. Others carry seed, mend a tool, or watch the line of the field. Not every hand does the same thing, but all are bent toward the same need. In a medieval village, the field is not separate from daily life. It is daily life, at least for much of the year. Bread begins here. Rent may depend on what happens here. Winter comfort may depend on it too. Yet the labor itself remains very plain. Walk forward. Keep the line. Reach the end. Turn and begin again. As the morning grows older, the first chill leaves the body. Warmth gathers in the back and arms. The ground sticks a little to shoes. Dirt marks the hand, the hem, the lower edge of the tunic. A bird moves over a hedge. Insects begin their quiet work in the grass. Far behind, the cottages look smaller now, their roofs low against the wider land. A church tower may stand in the distance, or perhaps only a stand of trees, a stream, or a low rise in the ground. Whatever is there, the field remains the main thing. There are pauses, but they are brief. The ox breathes deeply. The plow is steadied. A hand wipes the brow. A clod of earth is kicked aside. Then the next row begins. No one stops to praise a straight furrow. The work simply goes on. That is its nature, and perhaps also its calm. It asks for attention, but not excitement. It fills the hour without drama. The field is also a place of silence. A few practical words may be spoken, but long conversation wastes breath. The sounds here are simple. The soft pull of the harness. The scrape of the plow. Heavy footsteps on turned soil. The occasional call to an animal. Wind moving over the open ground. Once you imagine it for a while, it becomes easy to understand how a whole morning could pass in this slow pattern of movement and earth. By late morning, hunger returns in a steady way. Shoulders feel the work they have done. The field has changed a little under many repeated passes. Long dark lines mark where there was firm ground before. Tools are set down. A hand rests on the handle one last moment. Somewhere nearby there is shade, and in that shade there is food. Not much food, and not fancy food, but enough for the middle of the day. Bread weights wrapped in cloth. Cheese waits beside it. The body turns gratefully toward the hour of rest. Chapter 4. The midday meal and the hour of rest. Midday in a medieval village is often marked simply by the body itself. The hands slow, the shoulders begin to lower. Hunger becomes hard to ignore. So for a little while, the tools are left where they can be found again. A tree becomes a place to rest. A hedge becomes enough of a shelter. A patch of shade beside a wall is enough to make the next hour easier. The meal is small and plain. A piece of dark bread is brought out from a cloth bundle. It is dense bread, coarse and filling, made from the grains available to ordinary people. There may be a bit of cheese, firm and simple. Sometimes there is an onion, or a little salt, or a scrap of cold food from the house. Nothing is arranged for display. The food is there to keep the body steady for the afternoon. Bread is broken by hand. Cheese is divided with a knife or a thumb. A wooden cup may hold watered ale or plain water. The smells are modest and good. Grain, milk, a little sourness from storage. Around it all is the smell of grass, bark, warm cloth, and air moving through leaves. For a while, these are enough. What makes this hour restful is how little it asks from anyone. A worker sits with a back against a tree. Another stretches out on the ground for a moment. A child watches light moving through branches. The ox stands nearby, flicking at flies with slow patience. No one is idle exactly, because rest itself is part of keeping the day in order. But no one needs to strain during this short pause. There may be a few words, but not many. Someone remarks on the weather. Someone notes that the ground is softer in one part of the field than another. Someone says nothing at all. The stillness is not empty. It is full of small sounds that do not demand attention. Insects hum in the grass. Leaves move overhead. A cup is set down. A crust breaks. A sleeve brushes crumbs from a lap. For a few minutes, the body is allowed to be heavy. The weight of the morning settles down through the spine, into the hips, into the legs, and into the ground. The shade is cool enough to be welcome. The sun beyond it is warm without being harsh. It is easy to imagine someone closing tired eyes and doing nothing at all except breathing and listening to leaves. In a life shaped by repeated labor, this kind of pause matters. It does not stop the day. It makes the rest of the day possible, but the pause does not last forever. The cloth is folded again. The last bite is taken. Hands brush away crumbs. Someone stands slowly and reaches for a tool. Yet not every hand returns to the same labor. Some remain with the field. Others turn back toward the village, where different kinds of work are waiting. Wool must be spun. Small wooden things must be shaped or repaired. The day goes on, but it goes on more quietly now, as the sun begins its slow movement toward afternoon. Chapter 5. The Afternoon Craft. By afternoon, the village gathers inward again. The broad labor of the field continues for some people, but many tasks return to the doorway, the bench, the hearthside, and the patch of ground just outside the house. These are the quieter tasks of the day. They are done close to home, often with seated hands and repeated motions. They ask for patience more than strength. One of the most common of these tasks is spinning wool. Before cloth can be woven, wool must first become thread. A woman may sit on a stool with a basket beside her and a distaff of loose wool in hand. From below hangs a drop spindle, turning lightly as the fibers are drawn out and twisted. The movement is small, practiced, and calm. Fingers pull a little wool free. The spindle turns. Twist travels upward into the fiber. Then the new thread is wound on, and the process begins again. The wool itself has a soft but slightly rough feel. It catches gently against the skin. There may still be a faint scent of lanolin in it, a warm animal smell, plain and familiar. Good thread comes from steady hands. Too much pull makes it thin. Too little makes it thick and uneven. So the spinner works by feel and habit. The spindle drops, turns, and rises. Drops, turns, and rises again. It is a slow kind of making and a soothing one to imagine. Nearby, other quiet work may be going on. Someone cards more wool. Someone mends a sleeve or turns the hem of a worn garment. Someone sorts a basket, ties cord, or checks a tool that will be needed tomorrow. A child sits for a little while, watching, then wanders off after a hen or a stick or a patch of sunlight on the ground. Afternoon village work often happens in company, but it is a soft company. People do not need to speak much to share the same space. Not every pair of hands is busy with wool. A man near the doorway may be carving wood with a small knife. He might be shaping a peg, a spoon, a handle, or another small thing meant simply to be used. The blade pares away thin curls that fall at his feet. Fresh-cut wood has a clean smell, a little dry, and a little sweet. The knife moves carefully, not quickly. A little is cut away. The shape is tested. Then a little more is cut away. It is not grand craft. It is ordinary household making. This part of the day is one of the calmest in the village. The sun has lost some of its morning sharpness. Shadows lie longer by the wall. Hens cross the lane without hurry. A dog sleeps and changes position only now and then. Somewhere, someone carries water back from a well or stream. Somewhere else, cloth is shaken out and folded. None of it would look important from far away. Yet these are the actions that hold a household together, day after day. What makes afternoon craft work restful is its repetition. Wool will need spinning tomorrow as well. Something wooden will need mending again. A cuff will fray. A handle will loosen. Nothing is ever finished for long, but that is not a tragedy. It is simply the pattern of life. The spindle turns. The knife pares. The afternoon moves gently forward. Eventually, another need returns. Evening is coming, and evening requires food. The spindle is set aside. The knife is wiped. The bench is left as it is for now. Root vegetables wait in a basket or cellar. A pot must go back to the fire. The village begins its slow turn toward supper, toward embers, and toward the closing of the day. Chapter 6. The evening stew and the closing of the day. By evening, the whole village seems heavier and quieter. The field workers return with earth on their shoes and tiredness in their shoulders. The yard is checked again. Animals are fed or settled for the night. Doors remain open for a little while to catch the last of the light and air. From cottage to cottage, smoke rises again as hearths are brought fully back into use. The evening meal is plain, as most village meals are plain. A pot is set near the fire and filled with what the household has. Turnips may go in. Onions may go in. Leeks, if they are available. Carrots in places where they are known. A little barley may be added. Perhaps a scrap of fat or broth from an earlier meal. Often it is enough simply to make something warm, soft, and filling. The preparation is slow and ordinary. Vegetables are brought out one by one. A knife cuts through them on a board or bench. Peel. Slice. Drop into the pot. The sound is dull and regular. Nothing about it seeks beauty. It is simply the work needed to turn what the house has into supper. As the pot warms, the room begins to smell of evening. Onion sweetens in the heat. Earthy roots soften. Smoke hangs lightly above it all. A damp sleeve dries near the hearth. Wool gives off its faint warm smell. The room that greeted the dawn with ash and cold now gathers the household again with a low, steady fire. People come together gradually. Someone enters carrying a small armful of wood. Someone rinses a bowl. Someone lowers tired feet onto a stool. Outside, the lane loses its color as light fades. The roofs become darker. The path becomes less distinct. A dog circles and lies down. Hens are quiet now. The village folds inward by degrees, rather than all at once. When the stew is ready, bowls are filled. Steam rises in thin, pale threads. Bread, if any remains, is eaten with it. The meal settles into a quiet rhythm of spoon, breath, and warmth. There may be a little talk, but not much. Much of the day has already been spoken through labor. No one needs to explain the morning chores, the field, the spinning, or the wood shavings on the ground. Everyone has lived some part of the same day. After supper come the last small tasks. A bowl is scraped. The pot is moved back from the heat. Embers are settled for the night. A blanket is shaken out. A shoe is set by the wall. A bench becomes a sleeping place again, or a sleeping place simply receives the body that has worked enough for one day. Children grow drowsy first. Adults move more slowly now, as if the whole room has grown heavier with evening. Outside, the last light leaves the lane. The air cools again and carries the smell of damp earth up from the ground. Sound thins. Smoke thins. A shutter closes somewhere. Then another. The village does not end the day with ceremony. It simply grows quieter and quieter until quiet is all that remains. Back at the hearth, the fire no longer leaps. It glows under ash, red and low, much as it did before dawn. The day has gone full circle. Morning began with embers, and night returns to them. The room darkens. Blankets settle. The last small movements fade away. And the village, having finished its ordinary work, settles back into the quiet of night. Now everything is still. The lane is empty. The tools are laid down. The animals are settled. The bowls are quiet. The spindle is no longer turning. Only the hearth keeps a small red memory of the day. You can remain here for a little while, under the thatch, beside the low fire, with the faint smell of smoke and wool and earth around you. Nothing more is required. The work is done. Morning can wait. The village sleeps now, and you may sleep with it, slowly and easily. Good night. Welcome. Tonight there is very little to do and very little to think about. Imagine that you are standing in a quiet courtyard in the ancient Mediterranean, where the last light of day rests on pale stone and worn clay. The heat has already begun to leave the walls. A well sits in one corner. A few jars lean against smooth plaster. Somewhere nearby, olive oil waits in a small lamp, and the hearth gives off the last patient breath of warm ash. Nothing important is about to happen. The household is only settling, slowly and carefully, into evening. So let your thoughts grow simple. Follow the lamps, the water, the linen, and the soft sounds of a city becoming quiet. Chapter 1. The Fading of the Light. In an ancient courtyard, evening does not fall like a curtain. It arrives by small changes. A bright wall turns pale. A pale wall turns gray. The sunlight that stood all afternoon on the upper plaster begins to slide lower, touching the lip of a jar, the edge of a doorway, the worn rim of the well. The stone beneath the feet is still holding the day, but less than it was an hour ago. Heat leaves it little by little, as if the courtyard itself were breathing out. A hanging cloth no longer shines white. Wool and linen soften into dusk colors, cream and brown and faded red. Even dust seems calmer now. During the day, a house of this kind has many small movements. Sandals cross the courtyard. Water is drawn. Grain is ground. Bowls are carried from one room to another. But at this hour, the movements begin to shorten. The tasks that remain are the last tasks, the easy tasks, the tasks that belong to closing rather than opening. Someone lifts a basket that has been standing in the shade. Someone else shakes crumbs from a cloth. A broom of stiff reeds passes over the paving stones in slow strokes, gathering the fine dust that drifted in from the street or from the feet of the household during the day. The sweeping sound is dry and regular. It asks for no attention. Beyond the courtyard walls, the city is also changing its pace. A call from the street comes more faintly than before. A cartwheel, heard at a distance, rolls for a moment and is gone. Somewhere, a door closes with a solid wooden weight. Somewhere, a donkey shifts in its stall and then grows still again. In a port town, the noise of labor by the water would already be thinning. In an inland town, the last market voices would be folding back into houses and courtyards like this one. No clock announces the hour. The hour is known by shadow, by habit, by the angle of the light on stone, by the cooling of the air under the awning, by the simple knowledge that the day is tired now. A courtyard house gathers evening in its center. Rooms open inward, toward the square of open sky, and so the last light lingers there before it disappears from the rest of the home. The threshold of one room is still bright. Another is already dim. A woman pauses with folded linen over one arm and glances up, only briefly, to measure how much daylight remains. In a larger house, servants would be making the same calculation. In a smaller house, the family would do it themselves. But the rhythm would be much the same. Things are put back where they belong. Water jars are checked. The bench against the wall becomes a place to sit rather than a place to sort and stack. Bodies begin to move as if they are no longer racing the sun. Above, the sky loses its hard brightness and becomes gentler. Blue deepens. The first evening birds pass overhead and vanish. If there are vines climbing the courtyard wall, their leaves no longer cast sharp shadows. If there is a fig tree in a corner, its broad leaves are now only shapes against the remaining light. The day has not ended yet, but it is no longer fully a day. The household feels that change before anyone speaks of it. Voices lower. Footsteps slow. Even children, if there are children here, become quieter for a little while, not from command, but from the simple influence of the hour. Evening asks less of everyone. It asks only that they finish, rinse, fold, cover, sweep, and let the light go. And so the courtyard waits in that brief, soft interval before the lamps are lit. The well is dark at its center. The jars hold the last warmth on their outer surfaces and the first coolness inside. The doorway curtains hang without moving. A faint smell of olive oil, old stone, and wood smoke remains in the air from the long, ordinary day. It is an uneventful smell, a restful smell. Nothing in it asks to be remembered. Nothing in it asks to be solved. The light fades a little more. The house gives up its brightness room by room. Soon, hands will reach for the lamps. Chapter 2. Lighting the lamps. The first lamp of the evening is often lit before darkness fully arrives. Not because the house is already dark, but because the household knows what comes next. A lamp is a small preparation against confusion. In this world, it is usually made of clay, fired hard in a kiln, and shaped to hold a little pool of olive oil. Some lamps are simple, almost like shallow dishes with a pinched lip for the wick. Others are more enclosed, with a rounded body and a narrow spout where the flame will sit. However plain the lamp may be, the evening depends on it. It is held low in the hand. It is set down carefully on a ledge, a stool, or the flat rim of a niche in the wall. It turns one corner of the house from dimness into a small, usable circle of gold. Before the flame appears, there is the slow work of preparing it. The wick must be checked. It may be made of twisted flax, or of linen fibers, or another soft material that will draw oil upward by patience rather than speed. A hand pinches the darkened tip where yesterday or the night before it burned down and left a little soot. If the wick is too long, the flame will smoke. If it is too short, the light will be mean and uncertain. So it is trimmed in a quiet way, with fingers practiced by many evenings just like this one. No one hurries the task. To hurry would only mean doing it twice. The lamp asks for steadiness, not speed. Then comes the olive oil itself. It is poured with care from a small jug or from a larger vessel kept for household use. The stream is thin and smooth. For a moment, the oil shines in the failing light before it disappears into the clay belly of the lamp. The smell is faint but recognizable, green and soft and slightly earthy. Olive oil in the kitchen has one life when it touches bread or lentils, and another life when it feeds a wick and becomes light. A drop may gather on the lip of the lamp. A thumb wipes it away. The clay feels cool compared with the skin. It is smooth where many hands have held it, rougher near the base, and always modest in size, because evening asks for enough light, not a flood of it. Once the wick is set and the oil is ready, the flame comes from another flame. Perhaps a taper is brought from the hearth. Perhaps one lamp kindles the next. Fire passes from point to point in the house, like a careful thought moving from one room to another. The wick darkens, then catches, then steadies. For a breath or two, it may flicker and seem undecided. Then it grows still and upright, small but sufficient. The light it gives is gentle and uneven. It does not flatten the room. It leaves shadows where shadows wish to remain. A jar gleams on one side and disappears on the other. A folded cloth brightens at the edge and fades again into brown dusk. One lamp is rarely the whole evening. A second may be lit for the room where food is set out. Another may stand near a doorway or in the passage leading from the courtyard. In a wealthier house, there may be several, placed at measured intervals. In a humbler one, a single lamp may serve, carried from place to place by the needs of the household. Yet however many there are, each lamp creates the same feeling. It makes the evening visible without disturbing it. It allows hands to work, bowls to be found, a latch to be checked, a blanket to be folded. But it does not pretend that night is not coming. The little flames know their limits. They only mark out a few calm islands of sight in the larger dimness, and so the courtyard changes once more. A moment ago it belonged to the fading sun. Now it belongs to lamplight and shadow. Warm gold touches the plaster near an open doorway. The rim of the well glows and then vanishes as the flame shifts. A person crossing the courtyard carries light across the stones, and for a few steps the ground seems almost alive beneath the moving lamp. Then the light settles again. The evening has entered its next stage. The wicks are burning cleanly. The oil is quiet in its clay vessels. The household can now eat, tidy, and put itself gently in order for the night. The day is over enough for lamplight, and lamplight is enough for what remains. Chapter 3. The evening meal. By the time the lamps are steady, the evening meal is ready to become simple and quiet. In an ordinary household of the ancient Mediterranean or Near East, supper is often less grand than the meal taken earlier in the day. It does not seek display. It seeks enough. Enough bread. Enough oil. Enough olives, lentils, herbs, or a little cheese. Perhaps there is a bowl of beans cooked soft. Perhaps a handful of figs remains from the afternoon. Perhaps there is watered wine for some, plain water for others, poured from a clay jug into small cups that feel cool at first touch. The food is humble, and at this hour, humility is pleasant. Bread is set down on the table or on a low surface near the lamp. It is coarse bread, sturdy rather than delicate, the sort that breaks with a quiet firmness and leaves a few crumbs on wood, cloth, or stone. Olives shine darkly in a shallow dish. A small bowl of salt may stand nearby. Goat cheese, if there is cheese, is cut into modest pieces. Cooked lentils hold the warmth of the hearth for a little while longer. Their surface catches the light and then dulls again. There's not much conversation, and where there is conversation, it comes in low, practical phrases. One hand reaches for bread. Another passes a bowl. A cup is set down with a gentle ceramic touch. The sounds of such a meal are among the smallest sounds a household can make. A crust breaking, a swallow of water, a spoon or ladle touching the side of a pot, if spoons are being used at all. The rustle of linen sleeves near the table edge, a bench shifting slightly on the floor, sandals brushing the ground when someone adjusts their feet. The lamplight trembles once when a person leans forward, then steadies again. No sound is sharp enough to disturb the hour. Even eating seems slower after sunset. Daylight is a time for finishing things. Evening is a time for letting them take their proper length. In richer homes, more dishes might appear. In poorer ones, fewer. But the feeling of the meal remains much the same when the day has been long and ordinary. Hunger is calm now. No one is rushing away to another task beyond a few final chores. The courtyard has already dimmed into shadow, and the lamp near the meal defines a small circle within that darkness. Hands move through that circle, entering light and leaving it again. A loaf becomes smaller. Olive pits collect in a dish or on the edge of a plate. The steam from a warm pot grows fainter and then vanishes altogether. Food, like daylight, quietly reduces itself toward completion. There is a special stillness that belongs only to the end of a simple meal. Not the stillness of sleep yet, and not the stillness of prayer or ceremony, but the stillness of enoughness. A body that was hungry is less hungry. A table that was full is less full. The household feels, without needing to say it, that the main business of the day has been done. Cups are lifted for the last mouthfuls. Bread is wrapped or covered if any remains. A cloth wipes oil from fingers. Someone tilts the lamp and checks how much oil is left for the rest of the evening. Someone else carries an empty bowl away to be rinsed. Nothing dramatic has occurred, which is exactly why the meal belongs so perfectly to nightfall. When the eating is done, the smell of food lingers lightly in the room. Olive brine, warm grain, a trace of smoke from the hearth. Perhaps mint or thyme crushed earlier between the fingers. These scents do not fill the air so much as settle into it. They mix with lamp oil and baked clay, and the coolness now beginning to enter from the courtyard. The meal leaves behind no grand memory, only a sense of gentle completion. The bowls will be cleaned. The cloth will be folded. The doors will be checked. Then the house can grow quieter still. Chapter 4. The quiet chores. After supper, the house does not leap into sleep. It passes through a final layer of small duties. These are evening duties, repeated so often that they almost perform themselves. A folded cloth is carried to a shelf. A used bowl is rinsed with a little water and set upside down to dry. Crumbs are brushed from a board or table into the hand, or onto a waiting scrap of cloth. If the household keeps animals close by, they are checked once more and then left in peace. If there are tools from the day, they are returned to hooks, corners, or baskets. Everything moves toward its proper place, and in that movement the house becomes calmer to look at and calmer to inhabit. Linen has its own sound in the evening. It does not rustle like leaves, and it does not whisper like paper. It gives a dry, soft fold as one edge meets another edge, then another. A tunic is shaken once, gently, before it is laid aside. A towel used at the basin is hung where air can pass over it during the night. A heavier wool wrap is folded less sharply and left ready for the cooler hours before dawn. Cloth that was used in bright daylight now appears warmer in color under the lamp. Cream becomes honey. Brown becomes deeper brown. The hands doing the folding are not inventing anything new. They are only ending the day in the same order with which the day began. In the courtyard itself, there may still be one more round of sweeping. Evening seems to reveal every little thing left behind by daylight. A fig leaf near the threshold, a scatter of chaff, a dry thread from a worn garment, a line of dust where sandals passed through earlier and no one noticed. The broom moves over stone in slow, patient arcs. It is not trying to make the place perfect. Perfect order does not belong to ordinary households. But enough order does. Enough that a person crossing the courtyard later with a lamp will find the ground clear. Enough that morning will begin in a space already half prepared for work. Then there are the doors. Heavy wooden doors feel different at night than they do by day. By daylight, they are passed through without thought. At evening, they are touched more deliberately. The outer door is pulled inward or pushed shut, depending on its hinges. Wood meets frame with a thick, solid sound. A bar may be lowered into place. A latch is checked by hand, not once, but sometimes twice, because night prefers certainty. Curtains hanging inside the doorway are straightened. A hand presses the edge of the door as if to feel whether it sits properly in its place. Once secured, the house seems to gather itself a little more tightly around its small remaining light. Other coverings are checked as well. A jar of grain is covered against damp and dust. A basket is turned upside down over bread that is being kept for tomorrow. A cloth is laid across a bowl. Water at the basin is emptied or left, depending on the custom of the house. A stool is moved away from the center of the room. A lamp is relocated from supper to a more useful place for the last moments before bed. It may stand near the sleeping room, or near the hearth, or on a wall niche looking out onto the courtyard. The flame is the same as before, but now it illuminates fewer tasks. The list of things still needing to be done has grown shorter and softer. At last, the quiet chores come to their natural end. Not because someone declares them done, but because nothing obvious remains. The linens are folded. The bowls are rinsed. The threshold is clear. The doors are secured. The lamp burns on, small and sufficient. The house has been reduced to its essential nighttime form. Walls, shadows, stored water, covered food, resting cloth, and a few people moving more softly with every passing moment. Soon there will be only the hearth, the courtyard, and the long, patient stretch of night beyond them. Chapter 5. The Hearth and the Courtyard. By now the evening has narrowed into its quiet center. Most tasks have ended. Most words have also ended. The hearth, which earlier held the practical heat of cooking, now begins a slower work. It gives back the last of its warmth without asking for anything new to be placed upon it. The brighter flames have gone down. What remains are embers, low and red under a lace of gray ash. Their light is different from lamplight. It is deeper and more secretive. It does not shine across the room so much as breathe in place, gently, almost privately, among the darkening stones of the hearth. Someone may still tend those embers for the sake of mourning. In many households, fire is not lightly lost if it can be preserved. Ash may be drawn over the coals to bank them. A small piece of wood may be shifted with a stick so that it settles more neatly into the glowing bed. There is no crackling urgency now. The fire no longer consumes the room with smell and heat as it did earlier when the meal was being cooked. Instead, it leaves behind a thin scent of smoke, warm clay, and charred olive wood or whatever fuel the household uses. That smell hangs low and familiar. It mixes with the oil from the lamps and the coolness entering from the courtyard. It is the smell of a day almost fully finished. The courtyard beyond the hearth has become a place of shadow with a few soft edges of light. A lamp near a doorway casts a narrow gold shape onto the paving stones. The well mouth is black now, reflecting nothing. The large clay jars standing against the wall hold water drawn earlier in the day. All evening that water has been settling inside them. Any little cloudiness from the stirring of the rope bucket or the pouring of the jar has sunk slowly downward. The surface near the top is now still. If a cup were dipped into it, it would rise cool and quiet, tasting faintly of clay and stone and depth. The jars themselves are cool to the touch where the night air reaches them. They stand patient and heavy, doing nothing at all except holding tomorrow in silence. This is one of the simplest pleasures of an ancient household at night. The feeling of materials becoming still. Water grows still in jars. Ash grows still on the hearth. Linen grows still on the shelf. The wooden bar across the door grows still in its brackets. Even the air seems to settle into layers. A little warmer near the kitchen wall. Cooler in the open center of the courtyard. Cooler still above where the square of sky has darkened into full night. If a person crosses the courtyard now, it is only to fetch one last thing or to look briefly upward before bed. Sandals touch the ground softly. A hand may rest for a moment on the rim of a jar or on the plastered wall, feeling how completely the heat of day has departed. Sometimes the last useful act of the evening is simply drawing a little more water. Not because it is urgently needed, but because morning will be easier if it is already waiting. The rope passes over the well edge with a familiar grainy sound. The bucket drops, then meets the water below with a faint distant touch. It rises again, heavier than before, and the muscles of the arm know exactly how to lift it without waste. Water pours into a jar with a hollow cooling note. Then that sound ends, and the courtyard seems even quieter for having heard it. The lid goes back on. The rope is coiled. The well returns to darkness. Soon nothing remains but the small companionship of ember, lamp, and night air. The household no longer belongs to work. It belongs to rest, and to the plain objects that make rest possible. Clay jars, a bench against the wall, a folded blanket, a quiet hearth. These things do not ask to be admired. They only continue being what they are. In that way, they are perfect companions for sleep. The embers sink lower. The courtyard darkens further. The last ordinary warmth of the day hovers near the stones and then slowly thins away. Chapter 6. The deep watch of the night. At some point, without announcement, the household crosses fully into night. The lamp still burns, perhaps, but now it is less a tool than a companion to darkness. The people of the house have withdrawn to their sleeping places. A pallet has been laid out. A woven mat has been straightened. A blanket or wool covering has been pulled over the body against the cooler hours ahead. Breath becomes the main rhythm of the rooms. Slow breathing from one sleeper. Another from deeper in the house. After the active sounds of daylight, such breathing seems almost astonishing in its softness. It is the sound of a household no longer doing anything at all. The ancient world at night is darker than many modern imaginations allow. There are no bright windows across every street, no constant engines, no distant electric hum holding the silence open. There is only what the moon gives, what the stars give, and what a few guarded lamps give before they too are lowered or extinguished. From within the courtyard, the sky above appears as a square or rectangle of depth, edged by roofline and wall. A few stars are visible there first, then more. They do not glitter noisily. They simply remain where they are. The darkness between them is as important as the light they offer. Outside the house, the city has not ceased entirely, but it has withdrawn into great restraint. Far away, there may be a footstep in the lane. Farther away still, a dog may bark once and then think better of it. In some places, a watchman might pass, not loudly, but as part of the accepted pattern of night. In a harbor town, there may be one late knock of wood against wood from the water, softened by distance into something almost dreamlike. Yet these sounds only prove how much silence surrounds them. Each small noise rises, lingers, and falls back into the dark, as if into deep water. The sleeping city is not perfectly mute. It is simply broad enough and dark enough to absorb what little remains. Within the house, objects have become almost invisible. The jars are only shapes. The bench is only a darker strip beside the wall. The folded linen on the shelf cannot be distinguished from the shadow around it. The hearth, if it still holds a live coal, shows it only now and then, a tiny pulse beneath ash like an eye opening and closing in sleep. A lamp near exhaustion shortens its flame, and makes the smallest movement when oil shifts around the wick. These are not disturbances. They are the last visible signs that the day existed at all. Soon they too will go. The night air touching the courtyard is cooler now than it was at dusk. It slips down the walls and over the stone and gathers in the open center where the sky can reach it. Clay that once felt warm from the afternoon sun now feels cool under the fingers. Linen pulled close around the body feels dry and comforting. Wool keeps a little stored warmth where it lies over the chest or shoulders. If someone wakes briefly, perhaps to turn over or listen without knowing they are listening, there is nothing alarming to hear. Only quiet. Only a house holding itself together in darkness. Only the same walls, jars, door bars, and sleeping forms that were there before, now gentler and less demanding because night has simplified them. This is the deep watch of the night, the long middle stretch when the world asks almost nothing of the living. The meal is over. The chores are over. The lamps have served their purpose. The courtyard has become a basin of darkness under stars. The city beyond it has thinned into murmurs too distant to trouble the mind. Here in the house there are no speeches, no decisions, no duties, except the quiet duty of continuing to sleep. Breath follows breath. The ash settles further. The last lamp grows lower. The ancient night, vast and uneventful, keeps watch without effort. The last embers dim beneath their coat of ash. The lamp gives one final small light to the wall, and then grows weaker still. Above the courtyard, the stars remain patient and distant. The jars are cool. The linen is folded. The doors are secure. The city, whatever little it still whispers, is far away now. You are left with stone, clay, night air, and the soft idea of a household resting exactly as it should. Nothing needs to happen next. Nothing needs to be solved before morning. Let the ancient courtyard grow darker. Let the stars drift silently above it. Let the last warmth leave the walls. And let yourself follow that quiet, unimportant evening all the way into sleep.